I've never been chair, I've never been chairman in April.
Liz and Randy, can you hear us now?
Now I can hear you for the first time. Yes.
I'm going to go back through a couple slides so that you can hear. I apologize. Okay, now it's really loud. So I'm just going to briefly go through. The applicant is requesting a variance of 3.5 feet from the minimum required 6-foot east side yard setback in order to construct an addition to the existing accessory structure located 2.5 feet from the east side property line. The code section that is applicable is 53.078J. Any detached accessory building with a gross floor area exceeding 672 square feet or with a building height, which in this case isn't applicable, has to comply with the minimum side yard setback requirements of the district as applied to the primary structure. The primary structure in the A4 district is required to have a 6-foot side yard. In this case, the property itself has a house that was built in 1908 and a garage that was built in 1978. The applicant submitted photographs of the existing property. Up in the top left corner is a photo of the house with the driveway you can see down to the detached garage in the rear. There are 3 other photos of the existing side of the garage, rear of the garage, and front of the garage. We always, as staff, review the codes to look at the requirements of what is needed or allowed in order to build new accessory structures or expand upon existing non-conforming accessory structures. The accessory structure setbacks for a primary accessory, the first accessory structure over 672 square feet is 10 feet from the main structure, 5 feet from the rear, and 6 feet from either side. They're also allowed to have a second accessory structure up to 288 square feet. That needs to meet the 10-foot away from the primary structure, 5 foot from the rear, and 5 foot from the side. In this particular case, the existing 1978 garage is 670 square feet and is closer than the required 6-foot property line setback at 672. So it wouldn't have been required under the square footage that it currently exists to meet that 6-foot side yard. It would have only required to meet the 5-foot, but being built in 1978, it was only required to meet a 3-foot setback at that time. The applicants are proposing to build a 312 square foot addition onto the rear of that garage. They are intending to meet the 6-foot side yard for the addition. However, once you attach it onto and make a structural alteration to an existing non-conforming structure, we still have to come into compliance. So we still have to get the existing structural wall to have a variance along that property line to meet the 6-foot setback.
I see.
They had come before the Board of Adjustment prior to do an addition on top of the garage and received the variance at that time. However, because it was predicated on that particular configuration and asking for the 1/2 story, it did have to come back due to the fact that they were asking for an addition off the back and a single story. You can see on the slide here in green, the required 6-foot side yard setback. And you can see that the addition is aligning with that 6-foot setback. And then the requested setback is the 2.5 feet from the side property line for the location of the existing structure that they will be structurally altering to attach their new configuration. There's also in your packet some additional information in regards to just some architectural elevations, which again are not required to be submitted, but some of the configuration so that you can see where the required setback is and where the request is in order to make this come into compliance.
City has nothing further.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Perry? If not, is the petitioner for docket 2373 here tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, so how should I do this? Can I swear are you all three going to speak? Only if you need it. Okay,
Let's do one at a time,
All
though,
right.
either way.
could you please state your name?
Tracy Collins.
Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
I think Mara did a great job summarizing what we're looking for. This is a variance that we're requesting. It was previously approved by the board. But we've got a different design now that is probably less obtrusive to some neighbors. This is a single story versus the two-story option. The two-story option we did have some interest from neighbors if they were okay with that design. So we hope that you'll have the same consideration this evening. And if you have any questions, the homeowners are both here to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Collins?
No, none here.
Is there anyone else anyone here in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone online, Mara? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in opposition to this request? Hearing none and seeing none, we'll close the public portion of docket 2373 and move to board discussion. Could we have a motion to start the discussion, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Anyone have any comments?
I would be willing to make a motion to,
Well, I mean, we made the
Let me
motion.
clarify
the
one
motion-
thing first. We did approve this board approved this the first time when they just wanted to do, when they wanted to do a second
And
story.
that was at the September 2021
okay.
meeting, correct?
That is
'Cause That
correct.
was the one I was not able to attend.
Yes, that is correct.
No, so I thought the motion was to approve this so that we can start discussion. That's what, we have a motion and a second to do that. Okay, so,
I'm just jumping. ahead.
okay. All right, so does anyone have any, I mean, we do have a situation where the garage was legally built and they're wishing to add on. They don't need any other variances. So it does seem,
Yeah, and I guess we should note that the addition is not the
2.5
side
feet.
yard,
right,
not
Right.
within the side yard
Right.
setback.
Outside the setback.
Yeah, I mean, I having approved this once before. I mean, it is these garages or houses sometime that are built within the setback when they're prior to the current code presents a hardship as far as I'm concerned,
I agree.
or it's exceptional circumstances, however you want to.
Randy, do you have any comments?
No, actually, I think it makes perfect sense. The garages that existed was one we looked at before, understood the addition. I think this is much more of a reasonable addition to make.
Okay,
I'll make.
No, we have a
We have the
motion. We have a
Okay, I
motion.
thought we were gonna-
Okay, so now we're going to call for the vote. All in favor of docket 2373, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Would you please poll the commission?
Okay, Randy Sprague.
Aye.
Okay, loud and clear. John Burse,
Aye.
BJ Popello. Aye. Deb Salzberg,
Aye.
and Tom Walsh, aye.
Your request has been approved. Please contact city staff during regular business hours for your next steps. Thank you. Tom, would you please read docket 2374 into the record?
Okay, docket 2374 petition submitted by Seth and Claire Wasson for an application for variance 53.058J of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance of 1.4 feet from the minimum required 10-foot south side yard setback in order to structurally alter an existing accessory structure located 8.6 from the south side yard property line. Property is located at 476 West Lockwood Avenue, within the A2 15,000 square foot resident district.
Thank you. Mr. Bontrager?
The city would have Mara Perry testify, but before she testifies, I would like to note that there are 9 exhibits for this matter the city will rely on in its case, which includes the city code and the PowerPoint presentation. We would like those to be noted in the record.
Thank you very much. Ms. Berry? I mean, you can go ahead with it.
Yes, you're already sworn in. Would
Yes.
you please state your name?
Mara Perry.
And are you appointed to the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development
What are your duties in that position?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 476 West Lockwood Avenue?
Yes, I am.
Is it within city limits?
Yes, it is.
And in what zoning district within the city is it located?
It's in the A2 15,000 square foot residence district.
What is the applicant's request tonight?
The applicant is requesting a variance of 1.4 feet from the minimum required 10-foot south side yard setback in order to structurally alter an existing accessory structure located 8.6 feet from the south side yard property line.
Which municipal code sections apply to this request?
The code section is 53.058J. Any detached accessory building with a gross floor area exceeding 672 square feet or with a building height as defined in the section 53020 of the zoning code exceeding 12 feet shall comply with the minimum side yard setback requirements of the district as applied to the primary structure.
Can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
Yes. So up on the slide that you can see before you is the boundary survey. The property is identified. You can see the existing house that was built in 1917, the garage that was built in 1995. The garage is in the south corner, but it is turned ever so slightly. So it's sort of southwest, southeast corner, sorry. As you can see here outlined in green, accessory structure setbacks for a structure that is over 672 square feet have to be 10 feet from the primary structure, 5 feet from the rear, and 6 feet from the side for structures, those larger structures to meet I have my PowerPoint wrong, 10 feet from the side because this is the A2 15,000 square foot district. So my slide is in error. It's 10 feet from primary, 5 feet from rear, and 10 feet from side. For a second accessory structure within this zoning district, in this case, they could be allowed up to 360 square feet. They are 10 feet from the primary structure, 5 feet from the side, and 5 feet from the rear. There are a series of photos in your packet of the existing accessory structure. That structure that was built in 1995 did have a half story that was used just as storage and has access that is not accessed through a stairway. The request is to meet only the 8.6 feet from the side when it is required to be 10 feet. The reason for this is they would like to structurally alter the rear wall in order to access the upper level with a set of stairs. The stairs off the back are meeting the required 5-foot accessory structure setback from the rear. The structure itself meets the 10 foot away from the primary structure. They do not wish to alter anything else other than to have a set of doors to access that upper level, as well as the stairs off the back. But because the structure is already existing and in place, it is only 8.6 feet from the side property line. In your packet, there is some drawings to identify how they plan to alter the wall, the rear wall of the structure, and what they plan to do with the existing space that is already up there and currently unfinished.
So I just have a question. So they're not requesting a variance for the stairs. They're requesting a variance to alter the structure by adding the stairs. The
Correct.
stairs don't need a variance. The area, the half story doesn't need a variance. It's just to alter the existing structure which was built not at the 10-foot setback.
Correct.
What they're going to do is on the back of the garage, you're calling it, and that's a side yard, the back of,
No, the back of the garage is the rear yard.
right.
But because the side, it doesn't matter which side you're structurally altering. When you make any structural alteration to an existing non-conforming structure, like an accessory structure, cutting doors in, cutting walls in, adding a dormer, they're structurally altering one portion of it. And right now, the only thing not in compliance when they structurally alter it is the side yard.
Okay, so the addition of the steps is not really an issue.
The
It's where
addition of the
garage
steps in
currently
terms of altering the
they're
structure.
altering it, but it's-
Correct. It's in the rear yard setback and it meets the rear yard setback.
In the city's opinion, is it make it safer to have these stairs for egress from the building in case of fire?
So that would not be our opinion, only because, again, the structure itself was built with storage space. If the applicants wish to amend this space to use it, they will have to have stairs, but we are not going to require the stairs to be on the outside. The stairs could be on the interior or could be on the exterior. Being on the exterior, they're structurally altering it. If it was on the interior space would not be something that would come before you because you are allowed to do interior renovations to a non-conforming structure. So from that standpoint, I can't say that it's safe. I mean, it could be safe and have stairs on the interior versus have stairs on the exterior. So it's not a city opinion that this is making it safer.
Yeah, from what I read, they toyed with doing the stairs inside, but that would take away from the space of the garage. So they went-
The applicant can definitely testify to their concerns with how they looked at altering the structure.
So when you say that was just storage, they're not making this as a living area?
They're making it into living area.
Okay,
Yes, they are.
thank you.
Anyone, Randy, do you have any questions for Ms. Perry before we move to the petitioner?
No, I do not.
Thank you. No one else has any questions for Ms. Perry at this time. Is the petitioner for docket 2374 here? Would you please come forward? Would you please please state your name and raise your right hand?
My name's Seth Wasson.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
So the side in question doesn't involve any construction. So to reiterate, it's just a kid's playroom. And so once you factor in a sidewalk that runs from Helfenstein to Lockwood, there's the width of that sidewalk that doesn't come into play here. So we're really just requesting the 1.4 feet, but where anything would be changed would be facing the opposite side of the house and the back. And where that staircase you had mentioned before, that we have a letter from the neighbors with no objection to that.
And you did look at adding the stairs inside, and can you speak to that?
Yes, and with the steepness of those and cars in and out and egress concerns and the fact that it would still be a concrete garage floor surface, it seemed much safer to have an exterior than an interior staircase.
Mhm.
And the practicality would be if the steps were internal inside the garage, you would be very limited in what you could even place in a room that's been sitting there since 1995.
Anyone else have any questions for the petitioner?
So just sort of redirect this. So what we're talking about is the code as it requires setbacks from the existing structure. So the stairs themselves simply modify the building, and whether they're safe or where they should be placed isn't really a material discussion that we should be having. The question is whether the code as it's written, which requires certain setbacks, creates practical difficulties on the land in question.
Right, but my question spoke to the need for the variance because of the structure alteration.
Right, and so there may be ways that the variance could be avoided. Those are things you can consider as far as whether this actually creates practical difficulties. But the plans that submitted, the question is whether practical difficulties exist because of a lane condition.
Anyone else have any questions for the petitioner? Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of docket 2374? Please come to the, please state your name and raise your right hand.
Andy Nay.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
In regards to the safety of having the steps inside, what would happen would be, we'd have to structurally alter the integrity of the trusses in the interior of the garage. And those span 36 feet. So once we start opening up the ceiling and that and start rerouting that stuff, then it becomes an issue with that. And I believe safety as far as egress would be, the better option would be the exterior, having that on the exterior. Not just for the firefighters, but for the kids as well, or something there would happen.
Does anyone have any questions for the speaker?
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience?
I do have a
Oh,
question.
go, okay, excuse me, sir.
You spoke it, there would be issues. Can you go a little further into that?
So if we have to cut in, the trusses are right now are like, I want to say 18 inches on center. So in order to have a stairwell proceeding up on the interior, then we'd have to cut in there, add some cross beams to it. And you'd have to have, add some columns, steel posts, some footings in the floor of it. And then that encroaches in on like parking spaces and use of the interior of the garage.
Yes.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak in favor of docket 2374? Anyone online? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in opposition to docket 2374? And I assume there's no one online for that either. Hearing none and seeing none, we'll close the public portion of docket 2374 and move to board discussion. Do we want to start with a motion for docket 2374? Start the discussion.
Well, I make a motion that we
Well, you can make a motion to approve it.
to approve the request in docket item 2374.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So, This-
I would say what we're really talking about is the side of the garage that is sitting in the variance. So somebody wants to change something that really doesn't impact the side of the garage.
I think,
They're impacting the back, which is not in question. I think the fact that the garage was built, doesn't matter when it was built, it's sitting in the side yard setback. So to me, it is a practical difficulty to consider.
I agree. I think it's very similar, in fact, to the previous docket item.
I would say I might feel different if they were trying to put the stairs on the side.
right,
and
approaching
that way,
further.
but they're not. So
Randy, do you have any comments on this one?
No, actually, I agree with the comments that have already been made.
DJ?
For the record, I think that Tom is correct in his analysis that the garage is already on the side. The setback, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
by one point.
So I think the practical difficulties here are
Mhm.
the alteration of the house. And this really doesn't hurt anything. In fact, there's a letter in the city's exhibit from the neighbors that say it will make it more aesthetically pleasing for them and in favor of it. So I think those are all towards the practical issues that make it in favor of the petitioner.
Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor of docket 2374, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Tom, would you please poll the commission?
Randy Sprague,
Aye.
John Burse,
Aye.
BJ Papello,
Aye.
Debbie Sahlberg,
Aye.
Tom Walsh, aye.
Your request has been granted. You may see, has passed. Your application has passed. You may see city staff during regular business hours for your next steps. Thank you very much. Tom, would you please read the next docket into the record?
Docket 2375, a petition submitted by Todd D. and Deborah T. Meyer for an application for variance or two variances from section 53.058N of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is a variance of 2 feet from the minimum required 5-foot north rear yard setback in order to build an accessory structure located 3 feet from the north rear yard property line. The applicant is requesting a second variance of 2 feet from the minimum required 5 feet west side yard setback in order to build an accessory structure located 3 feet from the west side yard property. Property is located at 127 West Swan within the A2 15,000 square foot residential district.
Thank you. Does the city want to proceed?
Yes. We will have Mara Perry testify again. Before we proceed, we do have 11 exhibits in this matter that we would like to note in the record. That again includes the city code and the PowerPoint presentation.
And that includes the 2 exhibits that we received late this afternoon.
Yes, 10 and 11.
Right, that we all have copies of and were emailed earlier today. Okay, please go ahead.
Could you please state your name?
Mara Perry.
Are you employed with the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development
What are your duties in that position?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 127 West Swan Avenue?
Yes, I am.
Is that within the city limits?
Yes, it is.
In what zoning district within the city is that property located?
It's in the A2 15,000 square foot residence district.
What's the applicant's request in this matter?
The applicant is requesting 2 variances. The first variance is a 2-foot variance of 2 feet from the minimum required 5-foot north rear yard setback in order to build an accessory structure located 3 feet from the north rear yard property line. The second variance is 2 feet from the minimum required 5-foot west side yard setback in order to build an accessory structure located 3 feet from the west side yard property line.
What municipal code sections apply to this request?
So these 2 sections are, it's the same section. It's section 53.058N. Accessory buildings can be built, may be built in the rear yard, but they shall not occupy more than 30% of the rear yard and shall not be nearer than 5 feet to any side or rear lot line.
Can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
Yes. So you can see on the survey here, the location of the house, which was built in 1909. There is an addition that is being shown in blue that was built in 2012. The property that you can see here on the applicant's exhibit does show a little bit of the configuration of property lines surrounding it. In this slide, the area outlined in green is the requirement for a standard accessory structure that would be less than 672 square feet. It needs to be 10 feet from the primary structure, 5 feet from the rear, and 5 feet from the side. I'm going to go through each of the requests. The first request is for the 2 feet from the minimum required 5-foot north rear yard setback. You can see highlighted in green where the 5-foot rear yard setback is located. The request is to only be 3 feet from the rear, and you can kind of see that highlighted in red. In this next one, this is the second variance that's being requested to be a variance of 2 feet from the minimum required 5-foot west side yard setback in order to build an accessory structure located 3 feet from the west side property line. In your packet was also a submittal, again, not required for them to show architectural elevations, but elevations of just a standard 1-story garage that is being proposed. I do not have any other information in regards to the conditions of the property or the variance that's requested. You did get in your packets 2 additional letters that were sent directly to the city in regards to this matter.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Perry at this time? Randy, no questions for Ms. Perry?
No.
Thank you. Is
What
the,
what is the proposed structure? Is it a garage?
Yep, it's just a standard
One-story
garage.
garage.
You can see, sorry, here, that it's just a standard 2-car garage.
who's here tonight for docket 2375? Would you please state your name and raise your right hand?
My name is Ben Ellerman from Blaze Architects.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
And before we begin, we'd also like to mention that the homeowner would like to speak after us.
Sure.
And we'd also like to request, knowing that there is some opposition, to answer some of those questions after that has happened tonight, if possible. So our clients are looking to build a 2-car detached garage, 24 feet by 24 feet in the northwest corner of their property. And the difficulty in terms of building, and this is basically, it's a high point in the rear yard in that northwest corner. The difficulty is actually maneuvering around that the northwest corner of the existing house with the driveway to be able to actually enter and park in that area. Currently, that is the area where they currently park. There's a gravel driveway in that portion. And directly to the east of the garage, there's an existing drywall system, which I believe you have pictures of, that is attached to the house and the sump pump. And then directly to the east of that, there's an existing shed as well on the property. We did look at a number of other potential options, and which have some, like for other garage locations, an attached front-facing garage, which would need a variance, so we decided against that. And then a rear entry garage, like attached to the house, we wouldn't actually be able to turn into it and get to it. And then the only other possibility would be building it in the northeast corner of the rear yard. But the difficulty with that is basically essentially the whole yard would be paved, and it would be built over the dry well, and all of that water, because that's a low point, wouldn't have anywhere to go and would dump directly on the neighbor's yard to the east at 125 West Swan. We do have neighbor support letters from the neighbor most directly affected, which is at 125 East Swan, and several of the neighbors across the street, other adjacent neighbors as well. We're planning on basically capturing the stormwater from this project, and then the homeowner will speak on how they're planning on doing that as well. And the practical hardship and difficulty is the location of the existing house on the lot being so far back into the rear yard. I believe we only have about 48 feet from the back of the house, not including the bay, to the rear property line. And just to actually be able to turn and get into the garage and actually maneuver into the garage around that corner is creating that hardship.
Now, the garage opening will face Swan, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so you're saying to move it further east would make it difficult to get around that corner of the house?
Correct, and actually enter into it. So we've got a large door, so you can actually maneuver kind of through that opening at an angle to actually be able to get into the garage. That's correct.
Explain to me the dry well. What role does it play on your property?
So the homeowner will speak to this more, and we weren't involved in the design of that dry well, but basically that we believe there's the sump pump and some of the downspouts of the house are connected to that system currently. And typically dry wells are designed to prevent capture stormwater during a heavy rain and basically hold that water for a period of time so it doesn't go on the neighboring properties immediately. But we weren't involved in that design ourselves, but we do know that there is an existing one there.
So a hardship would be if they tried to build the garage in the backyard, and they would want to be taking up more space, but they could be impacting the water runoff.
That's correct, because basically most of the rear yard would be paved if you move the garage over.
No.
And there's nowhere to put a dry well system. And since the dry well systems are usually downhill from your drainage, and if we put the garage at the lowest point on the lot in that northeast corner, it's going to be really hard to get, basically then the downspout, you wouldn't be able to have a dry well, and those downspouts would dump on grade and directly go to the neighbor at 125 West Swan directly to the east. That's correct.
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
You mentioned that the yard would be paved. Is there an intent to change the driveway paving from gravel to?
No, not at
impervious paving?
this time.
Okay.
Right.
Would you happen to know the dimension of the northern edge of the gravel driveway to the property line, which is not shown on the survey?
I do not, well, let me see. I can scale it because this is 5 feet.
24 feet, easy.
5 feet, yeah.
So currently they're parking 5 feet from the property line
That is correct. Right.
and managing to maneuver in and out of that driveway.
Exactly.
That is correct, but you don't have walls to maneuver around or a garage door opening.
Sure,
Because
sure.
we need 1.5, 2 feet on either side of the garage door for wall bracing by code. So we need to have that space so you can actually, so it'd actually be more difficult to maneuver into a garage than the current space because you don't have walls or a door to navigate around. That's correct.
Is it possible to build a garage that isn't that deep?
So potentially, but the depth of it to actually, because when you're actually entering through the doors, you need that space to actually maneuver and turn into the garage. So you're going to be entering the garage at a slight angle and actually maneuvering partially inside the garage itself.
Right. But there's still a single opening into the garage. It's
That
not
is
an individual bay
correct.
and then an individual bay.
Correct. That's correct.
Those are my questions.
Randy, do you have any questions for this petition, for this speaker?
No, not at this time.
BJ, any questions?
Yeah, are they proposing to do anything with the gravel?
Not at this time. There will be an apron in front of the garage door. That's pretty common, so that the gravel doesn't enter the garage. And most likely a trench drain to capture stormwater from the driveway and then piping that to a new stormwater system. But I'll let the homeowner speak about that.
The width of the garage is what, 24?
It's 20 by 24.
Yeah, 24 and 24. Standard opening, I can't remember, but it's right around 22, 3 feet.
Oh,
Maybe I'm wrong.
garage doors
So
are
this
wide,
isn't an
garage doors
exception, you're not
more
building
like
an exception
18, aren't they?
Wide garage.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Aren't garage doors more like 18? I mean, the standard opening for a garage is,
Normally we would recommend in a situation like this to have a wider garage door opening, like an 18 or 20, because you're maneuvering and turning in. So that would be our recommendation to the clients, just because you're coming in at an angle. So that would be our recommendation to the clients.
if there's no more questions. I believe Mr. and Mrs. Meyer want to speak, correct? Mr. Meyer? Would you please state your name and raise your right hand?
My name's Todd Meyer.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. So my wife and I have lived there since, I've lived there since 2006 and us since 2012. And, we've always wanted to have a garage. We just haven't had the finances at the time to do it, but now is the opportunity for us to do it. And, currently there was a couple questions. One was, the 5 feet, we do park 5 feet currently from the rear line, but we currently pull in straight in from the back, 3 feet from the line on the west. So the 5 feet over is one problem, and then the 5 feet up just makes the turn very difficult for us. So that's really what, the issue is for us. There's a letter from the neighbors that was provided. We talked to all the neighbors. We had one that was in disagreement. I think she's
Can
gonna
we,
speak.
can we introduce that as an exhibit? I know you gave it to me
Yes,
at the beginning of the
yeah.
meeting. So would you like to make it Exhibit A?
Yeah, we've marked it Exhibit A, and we'll
Okay.
note that in the record. as
Okay. Yeah, the two neighbors across the street and Mrs. Wolf next door to me on the east, all signed letters of support for the project. And just to answer, I don't know if you still had questions on the dry well or not, but okay. So anyway, that's, we would propose to, bring the gutters and the water to the front of the structure and into a trench drain and then off into the yard towards the dry well. And we really just, this is really the only way to be able to utilize a garage is to be able to pull more straight into it than what we would have to do if we were denied the variance. So any other questions?
Okay, so I'm sorry, could you explain these pictures?
Sure. So that's the dry well that we
Okay, because
built.
that was one of Tom's questions. All right.
Okay, so yeah, in about 2014 or so, we had just gotten finished with that addition, and our contractor had left the sump pump just with a hose out the back of the house, and we had about a 10-foot diameter mud pit. And so I came up tomorrow and talked to her and said, can I pump my sump pump to the street? And she said, no, you cannot. That's no longer allowed. It happens everywhere in Webster, but it's no longer allowed for new construction. So at that time, she said, why don't you put in a dry well and or rain garden? And so my brother's a civil engineer. I'm an engineer too, but he's a civil engineer, and I got some guidelines from him on a dry well, and it's basically a 10-foot by 7-foot structure with it's a hole, and it's 4 feet deep, and it's filled with gravel, and you can see there's like a barrel that the water is dumped into, and the sump pump goes directly into that.
But the water from your proposed garage, you're gonna run down your driveway.
Well, the driveway towards the back, it has a gradual towards the garage, so it'll have to be captured and moved over into the yard. Right.
But you planned for that.
I know I need to do it.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Meyer? Randy, do you have any questions for Mr. Meyer?
No, I don't think I do, no. I think I understand.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of docket 2375? Oh,
So
do we have another?
We have another letter from someone who
that's my neighbor across the street.
Okay.
He's one that signed. He was going to come up and speak on behalf, but he had a function tonight that he
Make it
had
exhibit
forgotten
E.
about. So he wrote a letter and signed it and sent and brought it
Okay.
over to me today. And
We'll
so-
note that as Exhibit B.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
but
And I only have
brought
the
one copy.
one
'cause I got it
copy.
late in the day.
Unless there's somebody here to speak in opposition, do you know what that opposition was? The
There,
basis of
you,
it?
wait until there is,
Let's,
Okay, well,
let's-
but
okay.
So one final comment.
Yeah.
To build a garage on your property,
Yes.
you gotta build it like you're proposing it, or turn it, take up most of the backyard to get in.
Right.
Or build it in front of the house.
Right. Another thing about moving it to the east property line is,
Yeah, after BJC's. Excuse me, I'm
okay,
sorry.
no, it's okay. Another thing about moving it to the east property line is, yes, we would have to have a driving surface in that entire backyard. We lose all the green space that we have. It would disrupt the current dry well. We have a shed there that would have to be removed. You can see images of the shed in that first picture. And it would probably require at least very close, if not, it would probably require us to alter our existing stamped concrete patio that's in the back. And then we'd have a garage right up against our patio,
Gotta get the back window.
which was,
I'm not sure about that.
Any other questions for Mr. Meyer? Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak in favor of docket 2375? And no one online either?
no one online.
Is there anyone in the audience in opposition to docket 2375 who'd like to speak? Please come forward. Would you state your name and raise your right hand?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dee Gentile.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
So while we have that picture up, this is probably a partial view for you. But I've submitted a letter where I have outlined 4 reasons, quite extensive bullets under each reason as to why I oppose the 2 variances. My property, I've provided you in that letter. I think you all have the letter.
It's exhibit 11.
Exhibit 11. Thank you, Mara. Also attached to that letter is a picture of my property line, which is actually a L shape. So it's basically an unusual lot shape.
Can you tell us where this was taken from? What this is showing?
That's my backyard right now.
Okay, so this is from your house, looking at your backyard. Is the Myers house in this picture?
Yes, their house is on the right.
Okay, okay.
And
It's
that's.
just, I didn't go in your
No,
yard, so I
I
don't.
understand. That picture specifically is to outline a maple tree that I'm very worried about that sits on the exact corner of the 2 variances being requested. So my property line is both variances being requested. I realize that the owners have submitted the east approval for this, but the east is not being impacted at all by this variance and where they are building this garage. My property line is being impacted. And I also agree that they have a hardship of a smaller yard than maybe that it's typical in the A2 zone, that their square footage might be smaller. I know it's smaller than mine. However, the Myers bought that house that actually is the yellow outline there that was proportional to the lot that they purchased. And then 9 years ago, they added an addition. And it's not just a small addition on a small lot. It's over 16 feet wide, and I believe it's 36 feet wide, or almost 36 feet wide. So it's very sizable. And as we've heard the owner state, they've always wanted a garage. Well, had they always wanted a garage, Why did they build an addition? The current owners build an addition onto the house at the size of that house and protruding in the way that it does that would make it difficult to turn out of your garage. So it's not like they bought this house and they're new owners and they go, oh, wow, I'd really like to have a garage here. It's that they made this situation on their own. And we have ordinances to protect the well-being of all neighbors. And I'm going to highlight to you why I need all 5 feet, okay? And that's part of my request, is that I believe this garage in general is going to cause me a hardship, but I can't stop a garage, but I could come and object to you that we not give them this variance. There's other options, even though they're portraying that there's not everyone within Webster gets a 24 by 24 garage. That's a really large garage. The exterior garage in my lot is 24 by 20. It's not, and I have plenty of room to have made it bigger, but you know, they want a 24 by 24 garage. They've also stated to you here, or the architect did, that there's no change to the driveway structure, that it's gravel. However, this board doesn't need to know what they do with that driveway. That's another group. So they could tell you that there's no plans today, but by the time they get that garage in, they can go and ask somebody else if they can put a different driveway in that doesn't absorb water the way a gravel does to some extent. Also, they're telling you that they're going to put a one garage door. They've shown you a design of a one garage door. However, they told me they want to do 2 garage doors. And that's why they are asking to have this extra space. And I agree with them that 2 garage doors probably would look really cute there. And they have an adorable house. You know, I have no issue with their architect. I use their architect, as a matter of fact, to do my addition. I know they're going to do a good job on whatever they build here. I just am asking that we do it within the variances that are established. I realize they also have a hardship that because they're in the historic district, just like I am, that they don't have access to their front yard. They can't change anything in their front. They probably couldn't put a garage in the front because of the historic issues of that. I understand that. But we also need to protect other historic homes that people don't put so much in your backyard that basically it is awful. Mara highlighted that it's a 30% ratio. Are they even keeping with that 30% when you put a 24 by 24 garage and you count that structure that's already there, and you count the shed that they have there that doesn't have gutters on it and doesn't dump into that dry well, and the concrete pavement that they have that doesn't dump into that dry well. So between Gray and Gore, we have a general runoff problem. The houses on Gore are affected from runoff from Gray, and because of the way the land slopes. Now, they have highlighted that the individual on Schwann has the most impact to this garage. I don't understand how that can possibly be true. They're doing a variance by my property line, and the grading of their lot is downhill, and any overflow they get, which I just learned tonight, they're not even putting the garage overflow into the dry well, is going to come onto my property. And then I have to absorb that before it gets to my neighbor's property, which I believe, and maybe they didn't send it. I thought another neighbor on Gray, who was actually next door to me, who's very concerned about this because they get runoff downhill. It continues to go downhill, this drainage. So I don't think their yard can absorb a 24 by 24 garage. I think it's really nice to get one. I don't know that many houses in Webster that gets one of those. So I highlight to you some concerns. I also am concerned about my vegetation, that I have spent over $40,000 just trying to get that little backyard to be presentable. When I bought this house 4 years ago, there wasn't a blade of grass in that backyard. There was weeds, all kinds of weeds. I spent 2 years cleaning out all the weeds in that yard. And now I've finally gotten grass to grow. It took me a total of 4 years. This year, right now, I have grass back there for the time being. And I had to dig a trench around my property line so that I could absorb the runoff coming down off of their property into my trench to try to absorb it. And then I put maybe it isn't.
Pardon me. Was that runoff there when you bought the house?
Well, there was no, there was only weeds back in my backyard. So it probably from their property, the runoff was probably there. Yeah. But I bought the house. I don't know. I just know that I bought the house with no grass and only weeds in my backyard.
This picture right here.
Okay, so there's some pictures of the drainage.
Is that taken from your yard looking to
Into
those?
there. So as you see, there is water on the other side of the fence in that picture that is coming into my yard.
I assume these pictures were taken yesterday.
Yes, but I could have taken them 2 weeks ago on the last rain. And I can show you after even a mild rain that there's indent in my mulch from where it comes in. It just doesn't pull as much. So when you're looking at those pictures, the one area, and there's a picture of the shed. So I want to highlight this as well. Again, they stated that the property to the east is getting impacted. It is impossible for the property to the east to be impacted because their shed is elevated up and all that water from their shed, I'm showing you, is coming down onto my property. It doesn't go to the east. And also I built up, again, with my $40,000 I paid on the backyard, I put over 10 evergreen trees along the back of my property line. That's just part of the investment I made. I also put 6 evergreens along the property line where they're asking for the variance. And I built a burn up to do that so that I could collect any water that's coming off my property not to go into theirs. And that's what I do right now. I mean, I'm still working on it. It's on that picture there. There's a tiny bit of water that's in front of that Japanese maple, that Japanese structure, excuse me. There's a little bit of water that pools up there that absorbs into the ground. I also gather water in the corner of my lot as well. So, and some of that is coming from my garage. There's no doubt about it. I can see it coming off my garage.
Excuse me, could you wrap this up? I mean,
To that end, I want to make a point of clarification here.
Yeah.
So, because we're here to talk about a setback variance.
Right.
So the issue today is whether that variance of 2 feet from the 5-foot setback variance requirement should be granted.
Okay.
So it has nothing to do with the size of the garage. That's all in accordance with the city code otherwise. So the question today and the issue in front of the board that we're creating a record on right now is whether they can present practical difficulties to show that the code as it's written affects them and whether they should therefore be granted a variance and allowed to build the garage as they've presented it. So my questions to you are, is there any reason for this board to believe that a 3-foot setback as opposed to a 5-foot setback would affect water flow or water runoff?
Yes, it gives more area for the water to be absorbed on their property, areas for them to collect it, for them to have the ability to clean their gutters on their property line versus on my property line. And hopefully it gives me just enough room to save that very large maple tree that is on the exact corner that's in the picture there of that where those variances are being asked for.
And so,
As well as my other vegetation that I want to take advantage of every inch of that 5 feet that is
So-
allotted to me by the ordinance.
so the land is not allotted to you because it's a setback on their property. So my question is, do you believe that the water runoff could be remedied in other ways?
I'm not an engineer to tell you about the water runoff, but it sounds to me, quite frankly, and maybe we should put this on record, that you don't want to listen to my side. And this is the only time I get to highlight how a variance that is positioned in the corner of my property that is also substandard would potentially be granted to my neighbor.
And we're happy to listen to what you have to say on the comments there. I'm just trying to target them towards the issue here today.
And we
Well,
do
I
appreciate
believe
you coming
all-
tonight and speaking. We do appreciate you coming tonight and speaking, because even though we'd read your email, this is additional information.
Well, and I'm sorry to be so passionate about this, and it is quite emotional to me. And I found out things that I didn't want to know about my neighbors when I was doing my research. And Mara's already told me that that's not applicable here, but I just am going to circle back that why do we have an ordinance if we're going to give variances when we believe that variance potentially could cause hardship on the property line, both of them that are the owners?
Let me ask you a question. If these folks are trying to build a smaller garage, say a single car garage, a little bigger, say, and they were putting it in the same place, or let's say they weren't requesting a variance, would that impact your property?
Well, if
Because they could build a smaller garage theoretically, and they could put it 2 feet closer to their.
And when I purchased my lot, I even told Mike Blaze, if he remembers when he came over, I said, oh, I'm looking at that property. They don't have a garage. I would bet they're going to build a garage. So I need to keep that in mind. And that's when I found out about the 5-foot variance.
But if a variance wasn't required, would you still be here? Because it could impact your yard too.
As
Even-
long as
It's just
there's-
2 feet, it's 2 feet.
Well, if they're not doing the variance and they're following the ordinance of Webster Groves, I don't know that I have anything to stand on except for potentially when they're looking at how the storm runoff might go. That would be.
It's not for us.
I would
I
have
don't
to
hear
say.
you saying that if there wasn't a variance at play here, they built a garage. That garage could impact the runoff into your property. So would you be protesting that or? voicing
Well, I mean,
concern about that?
absolutely it would, but I don't have a right to. The way I look at it, I thought I'm only allowed to.
You've got the perfect-
Well, except she has I think her point is there wouldn't be a variance request before this board
You would
if
just
they
build
were.
a
Right.
garage.
Right.
That they would just build a garage and have to get it approved by the architectural review board.
And approved by staff in regards to a stormwater management plan, which is required in the code.
Which Mara explained to me as well. Which, and I'm not crazy about what they suggested about just running it off into their patch of grass, but because, they have another structure there too. But, but that's something to be dealt with later. I'm here because you're giving me, and I appreciate your time, and I'm sorry that I'm taking so much of your
Right.
time. I look directly into their yard. It's visually and functionally an issue to me. Any closer that garage is to my property line. And I don't see the hardship that they have because the situation they're in, they made it on the plans. They built that addition, shaped the way that addition is, that makes it difficult. And my personal belief, they always thought they'd get a variance. And,
We don't know that, and that's not. before us.
Sorry, ma'am, we can't do that.
well,
The
I
Ducker addition, that's done in long past,
agreed.
and that's over and done with. They have a right, they had a right to do that.
Hopefully they're paying taxes on it.
That's another issue. We're not here to discuss that. So so a garage is a garage. Request a variance or not? The question you originally was, if this did not require a variance, would you have a concern about the water? So they build a garage within the variance.
I'm still concerned, but I am doing things to help mitigate the drainage. And as I told the neighbors, I hadn't been complaining about their drainage up until this point because I've been trying to work with it. So it's only because of this variance. And I personally think 150 feet, 24 times 2, maybe it's not 150 feet. That 24 by 24 times 2, that square footage, I'll take every inch of square footage I can to potentially absorb things coming from a downward facing driveway.
Do you feel you had a chance to address your 4 issues?
Just the last one being that if we have variances and they're not to protect all folks within Webster, including a neighbor directly affected by this, I don't understand why we have any ordinances at all.
Fair enough. Do you have anything further to add?
I've got one other question. I walked up their driveway yesterday. I walked up a slight hill to get
You
up to
did.
their house.
Yes,
And I'm looking at your picture. I glanced into your yard. I have to admit, I didn't study it
Mhm.
in depth. But it looks like your property sort of slopes
It does
away
slope
from your
down.
house slightly. Because the house down the street, the red brick one here, appears to be downhill. So does your yard slope gently, slightly?
It
back
does,
from,
and
say, your house
it does.
and on past the garage?
When I purchased the house, I noticed that I basically had a river. I called it a river. It was more like a little stream. It was a stream coming down my driveway. So I have rerouted that stream of water to come and go into my grass that you see on that picture where the cement ends. I rerouted it all. The driveway is now, instead of just going straight, it tilts this way the whole way down so that it goes directly. There's a dogwood tree there on that picture, and then it goes to the side of that. So there's a grass walkway that, by the way, is adjacent to this, is part of the area that they want to have this variance that I'm using to absorb that water.
Anything further?
Wait, there was, I believe there was one other neighbor that sent a letter in. Did you get an email?
We did receive, that was copied to the board.
Okay.
We do have that
You
in
have
front of us as well.
another
Yes,
letter? Who
from,
is my,
from Lindsay Peterson.
yeah,
Yes, we do have that.
she's the one that gets the runoff after I get the runoff. And she gets any of my runoff that obviously I'm trying to address.
We'll take the letter on its face.
Right.
So other than that. is there-
No, just that if the owners are going to have a rebuttal, I would just like an opportunity for a rebuttal as well, if you decide.
Okay,
Thank
let's,
you.
Anything else? Well, thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much for your time this evening. I really appreciate the opportunity.
okay. Mr. Meyer, is it you that is going to answer some, address some of these points, or your architect? Okay, all right. Okay.
We'll try to keep this real brief. Just to clarify, the garage is drawn, other than the setbacks, is completely within the code requirements. The rear yard, it's 576 square feet. The rear yard area is a little under 2,800 square feet. So it's 20.6% of the rear yard. We're allowed 30%. And the height of the building is, will meet that requirement as well. We actually have one other exhibit showing the contours of both properties, Ms. Gentile's and ours, which I can pass around to the board. Basically, the point of these contours is to show that the water from Gray, Ms. Gentile's house, her first floor, it's 10 feet above where this garage is going to be. So we're a full story down. She's got a rear entry basement garage underneath her home, in addition to the detached garage. But all the water flows perpendicular to these contours. And it actually goes from her yard and crosses across the Myers yard where we're proposing the garage, and then continues back onto her property. All the water runs downhill. Her lot's higher than ours, and everything runs to the east.
Let me ask you this question. I think the most cogent point the detractor had is that they built that structure themselves, and they caused this problem for them to turn into a garage.
We were also involved in the design of the addition. A garage was not planned at that time. And the difficulty with this current house is how far the existing original house was built back from Swan. So we're close to 70 feet from the street. And as she pointed out, we're not allowed to build in front of the house. So and this is a normal addition that everybody wants to do in Webster, which is the family room with the master suite above on a smaller home. And this isn't a monster.
And again, my question is, they basically shot themselves in the foot, and now they're saying, hey, we want to break the code because we built on an addition.
But if the house was not placed where it is on the lot, which is very far back on the
Which is
front,
exactly where they bought it.
that is true, but the location of the house on the lot, the original house on the lot, is a hardship in terms of placement, because basically then you would be saying, well, you can either have a slightly larger house or a garage, but you can't have both.
Let me ask a question about water.
Yes, sir.
Water coming off of a new garage. Is where will the water go? In other words, I think it was mentioned that the downspouts will bring all the water to the front of the garage. Am I correct?
There's a gable roof, so there will be a gutter on the back side of the garage and the front side of the garage. So that would be the north and south faces of the garage. Those would drain, the downspouts would be on the east side.
So to get me straight, the downspout is going to be the east side is.
This is the east side.
East side is here, so that goes into their yard, into the.
Correct. So downspouts can't discharge any closer than 10 feet from the property line. Now, the city is allowed to require us to have a stormwater design, including dry wells. And if they require that, then we will meet all the city requirements. So whatever, if we're required to capture all that rainwater by the city, then we'll meet those requirements.
That's to be determined later, correct? If this is approved, I guess.
No matter what, whether they get the variance, whether they don't get the variance, whatever structure goes back there, if it's over 400 square feet, we do require a stormwater management plan.
So is it logical to require the water coming off the east side of the garage to go into the existing driveway?
We would want a plan that identifies whether that existing dry well can handle the additional stormwater. So there would be something that we would have to have some calculations to confirm that that would be able to handle it. But yes, this is just a standard for any accessory structure over 400 square feet to provide that.
So the city would look at where the water goes.
Correct.
Sure.
Correct.
So there's no build a garage, forget about water,
Right. That is correct.
right?
Yes.
And water goes at least toward the existing dry well. And then the other side of the garage, is it going, where's it going? Forward, down gravel driveway, is that?
Well,
That's why the driveway does slope down towards the garage, and we're planning on having a trench drain to capture the water from the driveway. And
Yeah,
that,
that got mentioned.
right, and tying that into
So
the same
her
system.
yard, the lady that was here, if a garage is built, I see her corner post is what? 5, 10 feet at the most from the edge of the garage
So at the time, we also did a large addition on 146 Gray as well. At the time that was built, including this big back driveway and porch and everything, there weren't any requirements that were being enforced for the dry wells and water. And the amount of impervious surfaces of their property is actually about the same as our entire property, including grass, house, everything. So we believe that the vast majority of that stormwater is actually coming off the house at 146 Gray and the very large driveway, the garage, the porch, and not from our structure.
I think the stormwater question is like.
We've had a couple of these before, correct me, where a project is starting, the city goes over to the property, works with the property owner, the architect, where water goes.
Correct. We don't want to increase the amount of stormwater going on the neighbor's property.
Well, as I say that, I respect their opinion. So, I mean, I'm not just trying to figure out where water's going to go if there would be a plan.
Yes, it sounds like the city will require a plan, and if we are approved, the board chooses to approve us, we will meet all those requirements.
Does anyone else have any questions at this time? Randy, any questions at this time for this?
No, I don't think I do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Meyer, do you wish to?
I just want to say, we did build a large addition. I mean, we went from 3 children to 6 children. Okay. Dee doubled the size of her house and she lives alone. So everybody's entitled to do what want to do. At the time, I honestly didn't know what the setback was for a garage. It was not relevant at that time to me. I will say that, the water, I have one more little thing I can share with you here.
Please pass it that way so that the city.
And I'll note too that we received Exhibit C. We'll note that for the record. That is the topographical map of the area.
So this will,
No, they had copies.
and then
for
this
all
will
of
be
us.
Exhibit D.
And
What is Exhibit D?
We're passing exhibit.
it'll be very brief. I just want to explain a couple things about.
But for the record, what is?
It's coming down to you right now.
Okay.
It's coming your way. So as mentioned, the property at 146 Gray slopes entirely from Gray Avenue all the way to the back of her property, approximately 10 feet of fall. Okay. Her property is above our property. So about halfway through our backyard, going west to east. If you look at the first picture there, that's the impervious surface of her yard. Okay, it's her house, her driveway, and her garage. It's 0.19 acres. Our entire property on the second page is 0.22 acres. So she's got a lot of water that's coming down and off her property. Third picture is the water that collects in the very back of her property during a rain event and runs onto the neighbor's property. Okay. And then the fourth picture is a photo of me standing in my yard looking over across the fence. And that's how the water pools I can show you on the image up there. No, lasers don't show up on, oh,
Well, it's,
yeah, so
Sorry,
on
where?
on the east, go east or west, I'm sorry. Just on the other side of that fence line. The water pools on, but on the west, yeah, come south, down,
Down south.
right there. The water pools up there. That's the image you're seeing of through the trees. You see the big puddle that's 6 or 8 inches deep. Yes. And that water runs across her mulch. And the last picture is it coming through the fence and onto my property.
Can I ask a point of clarification
sir.
here? Because I realize we've spent a lot of time
Yeah,
on,
I know. I
and
don't
if there
wanna-
are questions. and
maybe maybe we shouldn't even be talking
If there are
about this
questions
here.
on the stormwater, I'm certainly not going to shut down the board, but does this pertain to why a 3-foot variance is?
It does not, sir. But I was just trying to clarify the discussion. of the
I
water.
understand, and I'm trying to do this both ways and be fair,
Yeah.
but I want to make sure we're
Sure.
staying on topic so the record's clear. And so if there is a point to where you're trying to get to this 2-foot setback
No,
variance.
I was just trying to share, as Ben tried to share with the topo, that the water, there's a lot of water and there's a lot of impervious surface.
And I'm sure there will be a time in the future where all of that can be addressed.
Thank you. Any other questions?
any other questions? Thank you. Ms. Gentile, do you have something to say that deals with the variance, not with the water, because that's really beyond this board's purview?
Well, I appreciate.
No, please come to, if you want to speak, you need to come to the podium.
Yes. I appreciate you saying that the water isn't this board to judge. I was merely asking for the extra 2 feet back for the use of potentially the water. I don't think it's going to solve everything. I also note in my letter that I'm working on trying to solve my water situation. And where Mr. Myers described as the pooling of water, it's not 6 to 8 inches deep. It is a little wide, and I purposely am trying to contain it in that area. It's also, while dry wells are a good solution, another solution is the ability to accumulate and pool water together. And I do it in 2 spots in my yard, and I'm trying to evaluate, do I put a dry well in? Do I put an English well? What do I put in? I know that I have a downward facing lot. And I also know that I tilted my driveway and I've changed some of the contours that
Ma'am,
Ben
again,
doesn't
we're
have.
Once
getting
again,
off
this is.
This is just not relevant.
Right, but I just want to rebut that. And then I want to go back to that addition. And, I
Okay,
feel
but
like I'm
Once again,
being-
that is not. before-
Again, that's not relevant.
So I appreciate your comments. We appreciate your time, but I think that, but we have a narrow focus this evening. And that's, is it appropriate for this board to grant a variance for the garage?
Okay, well, I hope you will agree with me and deny that variance.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on docket 2375?
No one online.
Hearing none and seeing none, we will close this docket and move to board discussion. Now, since we have 2 variances before the board, I think we're going to have to address each one separately. The first one listed is the north variance. Do we have a motion
So
to
moved.
get discussion on the floor to approve the north variance?
I'd actually, sorry, I'll make a request that we actually do both of them together. I expect the discussion is going to be very similar for the 2 of them.
Okay.
If there's some reason why you
All
think
right.
we should separate them, otherwise I want to make sure the record has the discussion included
Okay,
for both of
okay,
them.
all right.
I would,
I'm fine.
We will, okay, we'll not vote on them separately. So we have a motion to approve docket 2075 BJ, is that,
Yes.
and a second?
Second.
All right, so someone please start the ball rolling.
I will. I think this water runoff is a red herring. I think, if there's some litigation to be had, that's between them. The city has its place to play, but that's not for the Board of Adjustment. I think the most cogent point that I've heard tonight is that they created the addition, which caused them to have to require a variance from the ordinance. It's not as though they bought the property that way, and it was a self-made problem, and they shot themselves in the foot. And I think that it's fairly important to the topic.
Garages come in all shapes and sizes.
What's that?
Garages come in all shapes and sizes. Having a 24 by 24 garage, not being able to have a 24 by 24 garage is not a hardship. And that the shape of that garage could accommodate the required setbacks. We've had an evening now of 3 docket items that have set up garages that were existing that didn't comply. If we approve this variance request, we're setting up the same situation. And again, not seeing the hardship here.
I'm in total agreement. I think that, as much as I want to see anybody be able to approve their property, it is what it is.
Yes.
Tom, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I spoke to this earlier, and that is, what is a standard opening of a garage? And I might be thinking of the wrong city here, but I wanted to say it was 21 or something feet. For a standard two-car garage. So this, but I don't want to be quoted on that because I could be wrong. Webster may not have that, or we may not have that here. But that's a good point being made, is that if this variance is granted, and we put something in the setback, I don't think that the fact these people added on to their house is a factor in this. The fact that it got built, things were considered, and it got built. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about, should they build a garage 2 feet within the setback? I do have some concerns about the water. Most of these do get settled between the city and the resident.
Well, I think one of the reasons for setbacks is to sort of mitigate some of that possible water. Randy, do you have any comments?
Well, I kind of agree with the point that it's one thing to approve a modification to a non-conforming structure, but why create another non-conforming structure? I'm sorry, but I have a great deal of difficulty understanding how 2 feet either way makes it impossible to drive into that garage. I honestly think I think there should be some clever redesign of the garage. I think it can be within compliance. I actually do not believe that the homeowner has any issues with water. The fact that they have managed the water as well as they have in Webster Groves, to me, is impressive. And I kudos to them for doing this with their dry wells and all the things that they've done. I do the same in my backyard. But I don't understand why we would approve a non-conforming structure when I think we can make it, I think it can work the other way. I'm sorry.
Anyone else have any comments before we call for the vote? Okay, since we have a motion to approve the north and west variances for docket 2375. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Would you please hold the commission, hold the board, Tom?
Randy Sprague,
Nay.
John Burris,
Nay.
DJ Capello,
Nay.
Deb Solberg,
Nay.
and Tom Walsh is nay.
I'm sorry, your application has failed. You may see city staff during regular business hours for your next steps or options. Tom, would you please read docket 2376 into the record?
Okay, docket 2376, a petition submitted by Michael Lee and Elizabeth D. Hagden for an application variance from section 53.063D of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance of 1.5 feet from the minimum required 30-foot east rear yard setback in order to construct a one-story addition located 28.5 feet from the east rear property line. The property is located at 2 Karen Court within the A3 10,000 square foot resident district.
Thank you. Does the city have a case?
Yes, and we will have Mara Perry testify again.
Exhibits.
Yes. But before we do that, there are 8 exhibits that we intend to rely on in our case, which are included in your packet, plus the city code and the PowerPoint that is being used. 9 exhibits? Excuse me,
9 exhibits.
9 exhibits. And we'd like that to be noted in the record.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Would you please state your name?
Mara Perry?
Are you employed by the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development
What are your duties in that position?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work at the city, are you familiar with 2 Karen Court?
Yes, I am.
Is that property within city limits?
Yes, it is.
And in what zoning district is that property located?
It's in the A3 10,000 square foot residence district.
What is the applicant's request tonight?
So the applicant is requesting a variance of 1.5 feet from the minimum required 30-foot east rear yard setback in order to construct a 1-story addition located 28.5 feet from the east rear property line.
What municipal code sections apply to that request?
The code section is 53.063D, rear yard setback, except as hereinafter provided, there shall be a rear yard having a depth of not less than 20% of the depth of the lot, provided such rear yard need not exceed 40 feet, but it shall not be less than 30 feet.
Can you explain the variances requested?
Yes. So you can see in this slide here, the house at 2 Karen Court was built in 1949. The house, we have been able to see the aerial photographs from 1955. In 1955, the house was built or was already built over the rear yard setback, which you can see that little area just to the top,
Yellow area.
the little yellow box coming out. This is the existing photos of the existing house. The area that was built originally with the house or very, very soon after in the 1950s is in siding on that rear part of the house. The main portion of the house you can see is brick. Here you can see even better the area of the house that was already built over the rear yard setback. The setbacks on this property are quite unusual. So it was a recorded 30-foot front yard setback, which follows the curvature of the cul-de-sac. They have 8-foot side yard setbacks on either side, and the lot splays out in both directions and goes wide. But it's not a very deep lot. So between the 30-foot front yard and the 30-foot rear yard, the house is kind of sandwiched in between the two. So the applicant is requesting to try to put in 2 additions, essentially. One addition does not require a variance. That addition is on between the area that already goes over the setback and then stays within the buildable area. They have another addition that they are trying to do that is going to exceed just in the far corner by 1.5 feet. It does go at an angle, so it does not exceed the 1.5 feet for the entire length of the addition. It exceeds it essentially for the portion as you get further away from the house and because of the way that the house was angled on the lot. The applicant did also provide images of what they are proposing. You will see in the south elevation, the dark black smaller roof on the right-hand side is that 1-story addition that they're planning to do that would exceed the setback in the far back corner. And the east elevation above, it's that window all the way to the left-hand side and that little bit of roof line right there. That portion is what's going to exceed that rear yard setback by 1.5 feet. And staff does not have anything else unless there are questions.
Any questions for Ms. Perry? Would the petitioner for 2376 want to come forward?
I'm going to promote her or promote them to to be a
Okay,
panelist.
okay, so she's electronic, okay, he or she.
So that'll move them over and you should be able to see, yep, you should be able to see up on the screen
Okay, Elizabeth, Elizabeth, is that you or is that your husband?
Hi. It's both of us. Sorry.
Who wants to start?
I'll go ahead and start. First off, just want to,
First place, could you please state your name for the record and raise your right hand?
Michael Hyder.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
No, I want to thank you guys for letting me speak to you guys tonight, first off.
Thank you for your patience this evening.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief here. No, long story short, we love Webster. We've started our family here. We want to raise our family here. With this addition, it's a pretty big investment for us. So with that kind of variance, you guys allowing this, it's really going to create a lot of livable square footage for us. So that's all I really have. If you have questions for me or Liz, we also have our architect Scott Holding here to answer any questions as well.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Heidegger?
No.
So,
I do.
okay.
What exactly is this addition?
It will actually be, the addition will be our bedroom, bathroom, master bedroom. As well as the family room, sorry.
Oh,
I don't have any further questions.
no, none.
Does Elizabeth want to say anything?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak in favor of docket 2376? Is there anyone opposed to docket 2376? Hearing none and seeing none, we will close docket 2376 for public discussion and move to the public and move to board discussion. Well, do we want to, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve docket 2376 to start the discussion.
I would move to approve docket 2376.
Okay, and
Second.
thank you. Well, to me, what we have is a shallow lot, and we have an existing, I mean, this is such a small variance, small area of the addition that's going to be a variance, and due to the curvature of the front yard, we do have issues. I think that the hardship is the shape of the lot.
Pie-shaped lot.
I think this is the poster child for difficult lots to deal with, and the position of the house makes it no better. And to me, it's a reasonable request.
I agree with everybody above.
And the house is already
Already,
and what they're doing is 1.1.5 feet across.
Yeah, right.
and not the whole face of
So
it.
that won't go
Right.
back in the existing house.
Right.
And there appear to be no water issues.
At least the water's already away.
Please, we're not going to talk about it.
No.
Anyone else have any comments before we call for the question? All in favor of docket 2376, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Would you please poll the commission,
I
Tom?
will. Randy Sprague,
Aye.
John Burris,
Aye.
BJ Capello,
Aye.
Debbie Saulberg,
Aye.
Tom Walsh votes aye.
Your application has passed. You may see city staff during regular business hours about your next step or options. Thank you. Is there any other business before the board? Any staff person?
Yes.
Well, then I think we have
Okay.
business. She needs to-
You want to stop?
Yeah, we. can close it.
Yeah,
You want to close
I'll
the,
move to close the meeting.
And I second we close the meeting.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
oh, and I guess, I'm sorry, if we could introduce her, but I've been having problems with the cameras. So Randy can't see her.
Okay.
Oh, I've had trouble from here, but you know what? I can hear everything. It's fine. It's not an issue.
Okay.
She had a cute baby, so.
Well, I actually got to see her.
Okay, so Randy, we're going to go ahead and end, but the next time you're here, you can meet my new staff member.
Well, and I apologize to everyone. I was really sick today and I didn't want to bring this to you guys. So
We
I'm,
didn't want any of your germs, Randy. We're so glad you could join us. Electronically, though. Thank you very much.
and it's certainly been an interesting evening. So thank you too.
Thanks, Randy.
Yes.
Be well.
Now